I say, you people, why don't you see how to unite? Because Uganda, even if you wanted to build a navy, how can you build it? We don't have access to the sea. The political organization in Africa is so irrational. Some of the countries have no access to the sea. For economic purposes, but also for defense purposes, you are stuck. How do I export my products? That's why we have got endless discussion with Kenya, then this one stops, then another one comes, then the railway, the pipeline, the what, we discuss. But that ocean belongs to me. Because where is my ocean? I'm entitled to that ocean. In future, we are going to have wars. In the future, we're going to have wars. How can you say that you are in a block of flats, that the compound belongs to only the flats on the ground floor, that the compound belongs to the whole block? All the flats are entitled to the compound.
Yeah.
There's no way you can say. So may I just watch these people? You're really endangering yourself. How can you have a situation like this? Uganda is...
Ugandan President Yoweri has just shaken East Africa with a bold warning. He says Uganda is entitled to access the Indian Ocean through Kenya. And if this issue is not resolved, future wars could erupt. Strong words. But what lies behind them? Welcome to Africarized. I'm 𝒃𝒂𝒏𝒍, and today we unpack a story that could define the future of East Africa's stability and even test the dream of African unity. Before we dive in, remember to join our Africarized membership for early access to exclusive content and documentaries. And don't forget to check out Africarized shop in the description below for African-inspired apparel and home decor that celebrates our roots. Museveni declared that Uganda has been locked out of what rightfully belongs to me, referring to direct access to the Indian Ocean. Speaking in Kampala, Museveni declared that Uganda has been locked out of what rightfully belongs to us, referring to direct access to the Indian Ocean. He said Kenya must grant Uganda that access, warning that future wars could arise if it does not happen. His son, General 𝒂𝒂𝒊𝒔𝒆, added fuel to the fire, warning of big problems if Kenya refuses to cooperate. This comes just months after Uganda clashed with Kenya over an oil import deal, after Kenya blocked Uganda's request to use its pipeline system. So, is this about oil, trade, or something much deeper? Africa's unfinished liberation. When Museveni speaks of being locked out, he is not just talking about geography. He is talking about colonial injustice. Uganda's borders, like most in Africa, were drawn in 1884 to 85 at the Berlin Conference by European powers who carved the continent like a cake, with no regard for ethnic, cultural, or trade realities. These artificial borders cut off Uganda, Rwanda, and others from natural trade routes to the sea. So, Museveni's frustration touches a larger historical wound. Africa's borders are still colonial prisons. But let us be clear, this issue is not just symbolic. Uganda's economy depends heavily on Kenyan imports, like Mombasa and Lamu for imports and exports. When relations between the two nations sour, supply chains freeze, prices rise, and ordinary Africans suffer. So Museveni's statement and 𝒂𝒊𝒆's echo raises fear of economic or even military confrontation between neighbors who should be allies. But here's the deeper question. Why do African nations still threaten each other over access to resources that belong to the continent as a whole. Let's take a Pan-African look at this issue because this is bigger than Uganda and Kenya. 1. Colonial borders are still waging wars. Africa inherited borders meant to divide, not unite. Every territorial dispute, from the Horn of Africa to the Great Lakes, is a legacy of European partitioning. As long as we defend these borders, we are defending colonial maps, not African unity. 2. Resource control breeds rivalry. Instead of collaborating, African states compete for access to resources like oil, ports, and trade routes. Resources that should be shared through an African economic union. The West loves this rivalry because a divided Africa is easy to exploit. Point number 3. A dream of a borderless Africa. Pan-Africanists like Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Nyerere envisioned a borderless Africa. One currency, one army, one economic zone. If Uganda and Kenya truly embraced this spirit, there would be no fight over coastlines because Uganda's access would be Africa's access. Point number 4. How Western powers benefit. The more East African nations fight, the more Western and Asian powers gain control of our ports, pipelines, and resources through aid and investment. It is the same strategy of divide and rule, now dressed as regional trade competition. Point number 5. Unity is Africa's only defense. No African nation is strong alone, but a united East Africa, from Congo to Tanzania, could become a continental powerhouse, rich in oil, minerals, and human capital. The question is, will our leaders choose unity or ego? Interestingly, South Africa's economic freedom fighters, EFF, Julius Malema, have often wondered about this division. While not directly commenting on Museveni's statement, their philosophy echoes a similar truth. Africa cannot develop while fighting itself. Museveni's frustration might be valid, but the way forward is not war. In 1960, Julius Nyerere from Tanzania, Jomo Kenyatta, Kenya, and Milton Obote, Uganda, once dreamt of the East African Federation, a single state that could have rivaled Europe and Asia economically. But Western powers sabotaged it through propaganda and pressure, fearing a unified East Africa would control trade across the Indian Ocean. So when Museveni now speaks about being locked out, it is ironic because he is part of a generation that inherited that dream but never built it. Let us not be naive. Museveni's statement may have deep historical truth, but it also carries political motives. He is facing growing pressure at home, restless youth population, and succession questions involving his son, Muhoozi. Raising a nationalistic issue like Indian Ocean access might rally Ugandans behind him and shift attention from domestic issues. So, this is not just about geography. It is politics dressed as patriotism. Here is the irony. Africa is the richest continent in the world, yet its nations still fight over crumbs of access to oceans, oil, and mineral. We talk about sovereignty, but our ports are leased to foreign companies, our banks owned by outsiders, and our policies dictated by global powers. This is the African question. Why do Africans keep defending borders drawn by colonizers instead of redrawing the map for ourselves? The only lasting solution is Pan-African unity, not as a slogan, but as an economic and political reality. Uganda's access to the Indian Ocean should not be seen as a threat to Kenya, but as a step toward continental trade freedom. It is time we stopped thinking like colonial subjects and started thinking like Africans with a shared destiny. What do you think? Is Museveni's demand justified, or is it just political theater? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's have this conversation as Africans, not as divided nations. Before you go, check out Africarized shop, link in the description. Get your Pan-African hoodies mugs, and accessories that celebrate African pride. And don't forget to join Africarized membership for exclusive content, behind-the-scenes discussion, and early access our upcoming documentary. Because here on Africarized, we don't just talk about Africa, we reclaim it.